Okay, so looks like I've got about 40 minutes to go on my mash before that's done. Now there's one part here where I'm not going to do it in the Instant Pot, and that is when we're done with mashing and getting all of our sugars converted. The next step is going to be to drain all the liquid from the grain into another kettle. That's where we start extracting the wort from the mash. And that process is called sparging. We're doing a single sparge modified, I'll call it. And what we're going to do is we're going to very carefully pour this through a colander. Let the grains set a nice bed in the bottom of the colander, and I'll probably pour it back and forth between my kettle and my Instant Pot kettle a couple of times just to make sure it gets as much of the solids out of it. After that, the step that's not really part of the Instant Pot is I'm going to warm up my sparge water, which will be the last little bit of fluid, because there'll be a lot of retention in the grain. I've got 0.75 gallons of water. I'm going to heat it up to 167 degrees, I believe it is, Fahrenheit, and then that'll be a final rinse over the top of the grains back in the Instant Pot. And sparging is simply a fancy way to say rinsing. That's all we're doing, is we're just rinsing the grains off and trying to get as much of the sugar out of the grains as we possibly can. So that's kind of the big difference between doing an all grain recipe versus an extract recipe. And you can make some great beers with extract, and I do extract. And there's a good argument for starting my first episode with an extract. But I really was hoping to just show the versatility of the Instant Pot by doing an all grain brew. I'll probably do an extract recipe at some point with the Instant Pot. I've got a couple of beers that I like to do if this all goes well and I get some kind of decent feedback. I'd like to try a couple of others and share them with you, share what I've learned. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up of where we were with this and what we needed to do with the sparge water, getting it ready to go for the sparging step after the mashing is done. So. Okay, so our mash cycle finished up, which means that we need to start getting the wort out of the grain. That's kind of one thing I really like about this, is that unlike being on a burner or over a gas flame or something like that, you can just set the temperature and basically walk away from it. Once you know about what your temperature tolerances are, like I'm 160. I actually set the temperature at 165, but it mashed at 155. I opened it up a couple of times just to stir it and measure the temperature, and it was very close the whole time. So that's kind of a convenient thing about this. So I've asked my assistant here to help me with this. This is in the sparging process. It's not quite enough volume here to fill this up and have this in there. So she's just my wife Kendra is gonna hold this up, and then I'm just gonna very carefully dump the mash water with the grain into the colander, and I'm gonna go back and forth a couple of times between the Instant Pot kettle and this one before we finish off with some hotter 170 degree sparge water. Okay, so I'll open this up. And I'll just set this right here. Now this is going to be pretty hot, probably too hot to touch. 155s. It's uncomfortable. It's you can do it, but I'll let you be at your own discretion. I would recommend hot pad. So I'm just going to pour this into the colander. Oops, sorry, hon. Sorry. And can I just get you to turn your hands just a little? There you go, just like that. Just pull it up a little bit. There we go. Kind of splattery. And you can see it's kind of goopy. It's kind of oatmeal-y. And it's going to get a little bit heavy, so I apologize. Okay, now get most of it out of there. I'm just going to grab my paddle, my little spoon here. And try to get some more of this grain out. I'm not too worried about it because I'm going to go back in with this over the top of the grains. So let me get over here, huh? I'm just gonna go on this side of you, and you can move the grains over to this one. Yep, just right over the top, just like that. You can sit down if you want a little rest. And I'm just going to go back and forth here a couple of times. I've got a little bit of grain that's made it through, but after we pass this through a couple of times, it should be pretty clear. The beauty of barley is that it builds its own filter. Once it kind of sets a bed on the bottom of the screen here, it builds up a little bit of a filter bed here. So try to pour this over, try to rinse off, get as much of that sugar out as I possibly can. And this, okay, might need to lift that up. Yep. Yeah, it's not too full right now, so you probably set it down and let it drain off a little bit. And I got a little bit of sludge in there, but probably just do this twice.
Set it back over again?
Yep. Oops. Let's finish draining off. Just get a nice timing going here so it doesn't goop up too bad and kind of minimize the mess here for the kitchen stove. Okay, so I'm going to try to go back and forth here a couple of times. Luckily my colander kind of fits on top of the kettle, so it's a little bit low to do like all the sparge water. Oops. Don't want to, land right on my foot. That would not be good. Okay, and that gets now the Instant Pot, this is the Instant Pot can. You can see I've got that pretty clean. I got most of the grains off the side. Yeah, let's go ahead and get that up and let her drain off there. I'll come around to the back side again. And I'm thinking that this will probably be our last cycle of this. As a matter of fact, I'm confident enough. I'm just going to rinse off. I got a couple little grains in here. I'll go over to the sink and just rinse off some of this. And it's really not that big of a deal if you get a couple of kernels of stuff in there. It'll just float to the bottom of the boil kettle when you're done boiling. Okay, we'll go pull that in there. And then I'm just going to run this over the top. Boy, it smells. That you really, you can really smell the honey malt. I think it's and it smells sweet and it is very sticky. For what I've gotten on my hands, I can assure you that our mashing was a success. It is about as sugary as anything I think I messed with on the stove. Maybe not caramel. Probably try with caramel malt next time, I guess, or such a thing. So, and as a matter of fact, the last time I made this beer, I said I was kind of careless with the recipe. I had 3 pounds of 2-row, same base malt that I've got right here, which where most of the sugar comes from, but I put half a pound of Crystal 40 in there. So the beer was really, it was super heavy on the mouthfeel. It was just a little out of proportion. So I didn't really care for that. And the other thing that I didn't like too much, and I think you'll agree, was that I put in a ½ ounce hops at the beginning of the boil. Of course, you only have a beginning and end of boil with an Instant Pot. There's no middle additions, but that ½ ounce was just a lot of bittering hops for 1.5 gallons of beer. So
It's kind of a kick in the teeth.
it was a kick in the teeth. Yes, it was. So, okay, so that's looking pretty good, hun. I think I'm just gonna set this aside over here now. And I'm gonna take our sparge water. This is our final rinse water. And I'm just gonna run it over the top. Rearrange my hand here. And this should bring us up to a little better than 1.5 gallons of boil water. And you can see the water is running through it quite a bit slower than when we first started. So that's a good sign that we've got a decent grain bed, and it is actually filtering all the solids out of our grain. It should give us a pretty nice clear wort. Yeah. Lo and behold, we're just a little teeny tiny over the 1.5 gallon mark on the Instant Pot. So I think when this is done running out, it'll look pretty good. As a matter of fact, if you don't want to hold that, hun, I think we can probably just set it in here. And we'll just let it finish draining out. And then I will dump whatever's left in here. There won't be much. We've just pretty much got everything a little over our limit. But I didn't have a problem with it last time. I kept an eye on it, made sure it didn't plug off like a traditional boil over where it gets really foamy. We didn't seem to have a problem with it plugging off the little rocker valve, pressure valve on the Instant Pot. But the Instant Pot I don't think gets quite as hot as a typical pressure cooker, so that might be our saving grace. Okay, on that note, this is just going to go right back into the Instant Pot cooker. And I don't feel really great about, there's not a lot in here, and it's pretty clear of wort, so I don't feel really great about running this thing much higher than this. So from here, the only thing we need to worry about, and like I say, this is probably the downside of the Instant Pot, is you can't get creative with hops addition, especially on pale ales. A lot of times they'll do like a 60-minute, a 30-minute, a 45-minute, and all these other creative, interesting hops additions that will bring out different flavors in the hops. And we basically can do 2, 3 if you count a dry hop. So we can put in some at the beginning. I'm going to put in a 1/4 ounce of Cascade. And then I'm going to put in another 1/4 ounce at the end of the boil when I open it up and put it in the kitchen sink to cool off. I'll do a nice water bath, cool off, and I'll go ahead and add another 1/4 ounce of hops then. Then I'm going to add the last half, that's easy for me to say. I'm going to add the last 1/2 ounce of hops a week after we put it in the fermenter. So it's had a time to ferment. It'll be a dry hop step for a week. And then that'll be everything. And 2 weeks we should be bottling. So let me get my trusty dusty, thank you honey for your help. I will get my trusty dusty scale here. And my bag of Cascade hops. This has kind of been fun to play with this year. This is our first time we tried growing it and all that other fun stuff. And we've had pretty good luck with it. I've used it a little bit. I used it to dry hop a blonde ale that I made a few weeks back, and it worked out pretty good. As a matter of fact, I got a bottle of it in the fridge right now. I'm thinking about opening up. So, okay, so we are going to go with a 1/4 ounce. I guess I need to change the units. Pounds, milliliters, ounces. Okay. And I'm just gonna. Wow, that smells. It smells really good. Okay, so there's 0.18 and 0.25. Okay, beautiful. And I am just going to take this and I'm going to put it in right now, just like it is, into our wort. It's a 1/4 ounce of whole hops. And I'll leave this out because I will need to have some more at the end of the boil. So with that said, I can put the lid on. Oh, and my wife asked me to also point out to anybody that has one of these that these silicone rings inside of here can take up some of the flavors of what you're cooking. So Instant Pot recommends that you have one for savory, one for sweet, right? Sugar, desserts. And I'm going to go one more on this, and if you have one for brewing, so you don't make your lemon meringue pie filling taste like Cascade hops or whatever your favorite flavor of hops is. So just a word of warning, don't Don't sour the Instant Pot, or your wife might not let you use it for beer making anymore. Or vice versa. Okay, so I'm going to put this back on. I'm going to put the pressure lock on. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this. Now, we were on the Ultra setting, which allows you to kind of freestyle some of this. So we're going to go back up to pressure cook. Right there, pressure cook. I want it on high, which it is. And I want it to go for 20 minutes. I've noticed that normally you do a boil for 60 minutes. When you're pressure cooking this, and this is something I discovered when I started canning my own wort for yeast starters, was that it really, if you get a really hard, hot pressure cook on the wort, it really speeds up the whole boil process quite a bit. And I've had no problems at all doing pressure cooking beer for well under an hour, 20 minutes. I think is just fine. Gets plenty of the bittering. The last time around, plenty of the bittering from the hops. It worked out just fine. I might do some experimentation, and I'll keep you filled in on what I learned. But anyway, enough talking. Let me go ahead and push the start button. And that's it. It's going to take a while to get up to its boil, but when it does, the timer will automatically set for 20 minutes, and it will start beeping at me when it's done, and I will let the pressure bleed off, and then we'll work on chilling it and adding our last hops addition. So in the meantime, I will get started, I think, on sanitizing.